And this team has done it incredibly well. You ready? So I think I'm going to walk down. I'll do it from down here. Our next three groups will be on the podium, and they'll share this way. I think it helps break it up, but you also get to hear, so I will give you these. You can pass it to who wants to answer. They will decide, and I'm going to start with a few questions. So the first one, what prompted you and your organization to begin this journey towards excellence?
So actually, the first time I heard the word Baldrige probably was 12 years ago, and it was brought to us by our former superintendent and his desire to go on the journey. And at the time, we were in our first year of creating our strategic plan, and we didn't feel like we were ready to take that on. And so we progressed through the ebbs and flows of a strategic plan, or for the first strategic plan, which led us really to move forward to, let's say, probably 9 years, so 3 years ago, for us to really feel like we had moved our strategic plan to a stage that was truly adopted by our cabinet, our board. And at the time, we thought our administrators, and we'll talk a little bit more later about that. And so I believe to be a very good district, there still seemed to be a missing component as to what would help us go to that great level, to quote Jim Collins' work. And so started conversations, actually started with Kim Cook, who led me to a conversation with you, Heath, and the journey started from that conversation as to how we would truly adopt Baldrige and move forward. So.
Let me ask a follow-up. One of the things that I got to see in your organization is your strategic plan did seem to be a living document that more and more people used. It wasn't something you put on the shelf. And it also seemed to place the students and the teachers squarely in the center of it. How did you do that initially?
Well, I think through that 8 years or 9 years that I was talking about, it probably was something that started on the shelf. And so, again, a little bit of that, as the coach mentioned earlier, about failing. And so being able to get to the point of really pulling it off the shelf, starting to really use it for what it was intended to be. Getting in, we had as you can imagine, in a school system, you have turnover of board members and leadership. So we would see a little bit of that change every year. And so it's hard to chase that moving target. So we were able to then move towards a 5-year cycle that really helped us stay on track as board members or administrators changed, and keeping then our mission, which is students, and our workforce at front and center in that plan.
So you said something really important, and one of the challenges that I see with organizations, especially early on in the journey, is not being able to get either a board, a cabinet, or an entire executive team on board. How did you do that? Do you have any tips for people on how you did that? Well,
I think for us, it was, again, a little bit of trial and error. We were able to, and I know the rest of the team will talk about that a little bit more detail, but for us, it really came down to spending that time together. I mentioned that we thought we had it deployed to the administrators as we began meeting, and it probably was maybe 6 months, a year into the process, starting to realize through vulnerability and having those real conversations that it probably was still stuck with board and cabinet, and had not really moved towards administrators. And so they understood that we had a strategic plan, but to truly adopt it and to live by that, it wasn't near in the levels of development and deployment that we hoped.
So in the early stages of your journey, what did you learn that changed how you viewed your organization?
I think in the early stages, we definitely learned that there is a desire throughout our organization to have a continuous model of improvement, but we have a lot of processes and things that are just not written down. And I think one of the things that's been really interesting is that, when Mr. Milner was recruiting people to be on this Baldrige team, really none of us knew anything about it. When we first started getting into it, we found out this is not just like a 6-month commitment. This is years of commitment, which I know many of us, if we find out something is years, we're going to go, I found a reason to not be on that team right there because I'm not ready for that. But nobody on our team has left. And so that in itself has really been evidence that desire for that continuous improvement. And to kind of add on to your question about the communication, the vulnerability, the transparency, one of the things that we discovered is that it was not filtering down. In our organization, we have cabinet level as kind of your top tier of leadership. We have what you would kind of consider mid-management, which is our directors and coordinators, and then we have site leadership. So one of the things that we have done is basically our mid-management kind of runs our Baldrige team meetings and our sessions together. That is something different than what we have ever done with anything else. And then through that, I think a little bit, maybe Mr. Milner knew what he was doing. The rest of us may not have known yet, but unintentionally we created an environment where people felt more comfortable sharing their honest opinions. And it took a lot of work in the beginning to get there because not everybody in the room felt comfortable yet. And so as we started working through the process and talking about the different pieces of Baldrige, that transparency and honesty really led to that tremendous desire for improvement. We also found out that there really was that we're working really hard, but we were working hard on the wrong things. And so how are we streamlining and really getting, I like to think about it, I think if I look around the room, how many of you had an above ground pool growing up? Or a pool in general? Do you remember when you were a kid, this is like before internet and before all the things kids have now, and you had to make your own fun, and you get in the pool and all your friends, you start going in the same direction? How you can really get that pool going and you get to have a nice little kind of whirlpool. We were in the pool and we had some people sitting on the sidelines, some people going in the wrong direction, but we're now more like we're all going in that same direction, much more than what we have in the past, and definitely continuing that continuous improvement.
I'm interested to see if we have the same memories here, but I remember some moments in the room when I was with you that there were significant shifts on your journey. Was there a moment in your journey when you feel your thinking shifted significantly?
I think there's several. Some early advice you gave is enjoy the journey, and I probably didn't understand that as well on the beginning, as we've learned throughout the process. Even having that conversation about potentially starting at level 4. And we consciously had that conversation, purposely had that conversation as to let's start, and we started with 2. Those were things that helped us understand that, to truly enjoy the journey. It's not, because we started a little bit, there were a bunch of type A, wanted perfectionists up here, and we wanted to get that application just right. It was a little bit more compliance than about the journey. Mm-hmm. And so that was one of several along the way that we began to understand what this process was really about, and really in trying to embrace it for what it can be and where the conversation that it actually lended itself to, as Christy mentioned, and the growth I think that we've made. And we continue. I was telling someone earlier about our mission statement, and something that we went through that process 12 years ago to develop our mission, vision, values for the district, and everybody understands that. But realizing recently, shamefully, that through this process and looking through this lens, that we had sites that had a different mission statement. In fact, if you really think about it, in Principal 101 class, the first couple of lessons you get is 1, change your office when you move in so everybody knows there's a new principal. And number 2 is to go through the mission, vision, values. We think about that for each of your sites. That's problematic. So to help our sites understand we have one mission, and so being able to really bring everybody back to that, again, maybe simple, but it took this lens to really bring us to that point.
And I'll kind of piggyback on that, because that was one of the breakthroughs I feel like from the Baldrige process, was when we were talking about aligning mission throughout the district so our sites didn't have different missions. Justin had kind of touched on this earlier, that we realized that there were some hiccups in deployment. And so the sense of felt safety that we have within our internal Baldrige team that we had developed helped us have that courageous conversation of where was the breakdown in communication and how did we not complete that loop. And when we were having that conversation as our internal Baldrige team, I'll never forget, Justin said, if this was family therapy, we just had a breakthrough. And from the only therapist at the table of Baldrige, I was like, yes, we did. And the felt safety in here is amazing. So it was just really awesome. And then we were able to get over that roadblock and then really disseminate to principals in a way that they had buy-in behind a united mission. And we were really able to drive that forward.
And this was a question that I asked Dr. Migliorino while we were, and I was part of your journey for just a little bit, was what has made this safe? And that was one of the things I noticed in the room, is it was absolutely safe to say something where you disagreed with him or say something about the process. And I just remember he told me, he said, well, I kind of demand it, and they keep me off of Dr. Migliorino Island of whatever it was. But that was something you did fairly quickly. You clearly had done some of that early on, but that was a really defining moment. And just as an outsider, I watched that. And so, great comment. How did the writing process help? Actually having to write about your processes.
That's my question. So I think that you could probably say I was the new girl, not necessarily the new girl to the group, because I've been in Norman Public Schools almost my whole career besides my experience at the State Department. But when I was called to Mr. Milner's office after being back district side for just a few years, I was like, what is this about? And so I went in, open mind, like, what's this about? And he explained it to me, and I thought, why am I at this table? And then the more he kept explaining it to me, I thought, it's because I can write. Because when I got back, my team has secured over $10 million in grant funds in 3 years to support our mental health programming in the district. We're extremely proud of that. And so I was thinking, that's because the district was like, she can write. Like, she's going to be on the writing team. She's going to write this application with the rest of the writing team members. And as we started going through the process, as Christy mentioned, the group that fuels the Baldrige team and sets the agenda is middle level management. So guiding cabinet in continuous improvement processes it was a little weird at first. But it did create that sense of felt safety. And so as I had previous experience with systems level work from my leadership at the State Department of Ed, but really being district side and seeing it happen, not from an SEA, but at an LEA, it really helped me to see that all of our processes and programs and sites, they're not operating in silos, as it seemed to me as a school counselor or from the state level. It really is. School systems are a business, not just an organization. It's a business, and it's one where we have unique challenges in getting new customers because of our competitors. And so through the writing process, I was really able to see how everything connects and how strategically the district was in setting that strategic plan and aligning goals throughout the system and just helping to push that forward. And I think it was really eye-opening for me because in my role, I'm a tier 3 gal. I supervise all of our therapists. Like, my role day to day is a student concern or putting out this fire or there's a crisis at a site, you need to go over there. And so Baldrige and our continuous improvement process has really helped me to take a step back and go, how can I take all of this systems work and apply it to, if you're familiar with a multi-tiered system of support, unflip our triangle to where we're not responding to crises all the time, and we're focusing more on prevention and mental health promotion. And a lot of our great results on the mental health side of things are in that area. So it was really eye-opening for me, the writing process, and seeing how everything connects to a larger system to really benefit the whole child. So it really helped me go from what are we doing to how well are we doing it, and then how can we replicate the good stuff that we're doing in other parts of the system.
So,
and I still kind of have imposter syndrome at that table. Just kidding. I'm the youngest one in there. Anyway.
You're going to notice a theme between this and another discussion coming. And I will say, if you would have told me even 5 years ago maybe, but definitely 10, that having a therapist, a psychologist, a behavioral health specialist at the table on a journey like this would have been a good idea, I actually would have been very negative. I will tell you, some of the fastest journeys I now have been a part of, there has been somebody with that skill set at the executive table, and the difference is monumental. And you're going to hear that again today. In 30 seconds or less, what causes that? What is helping the journey so much when you have that person at the table? And I don't know if that's a question for you or another member of your team, but
I don't want to answer that question.
Beth does a really great job helping us focus on the celebrations. We have a lot of us that are like, okay, great, we did that, check, let's move on to the next. And so every time we set the agenda, we go, okay, Beth, let's make sure you do the celebrations. And so I think that having that mindset that she has in her special profession has helped the rest of us remember that we've got to do the celebrations and see how far we've come.
So it's interesting, even in the midst of things you didn't do well at times, you learned to celebrate those others, which continued to move the journey forward. Did I hear that correctly? I think I remember some of those discussions. So how has your organization grown as a result of this journey?
Hadn't anticipated that question, but I'll take it. I think we've grown immensely in the last couple of years. We actually spent some time at one of our meetings a couple of weeks ago reflecting on where we started and where we are today. And it was fun to sit around the table and have everybody just calling out shared decision-making chart and different levels of decision-making, which was something that Heath brought to our team. We have site scorecards that we're talking about. How does that look like going to a district level? And these goal documents are living documents that we're constantly living in with our site principals and helped all of us to support with direction. I think communication in our district is much better than it used to be before. We're realizing when we don't close the loops and trying to figure out why is that occurring so that it doesn't happen in another place at another time. Our principals are heavily involved in the work that we're doing. We have 3 principals that sit on our larger Baldrige team work, and their voice is critical to what is happening at the school sites and how are they taking the work of the strategic plan and our mission and vision and inserting that into the schools. Where is it working? Where is it not working? We've made subtle changes at our school sites. When they have an agenda, they're adding which portion of the strategic plan does this support. And one of our principals that sits on our team says, if I can't attach it to anything, then I don't need to talk about it at a meeting. It may be something I just need to email out. And so I think we're much more deliberate in the work that we're doing together and much more intentional in the time we're spending. And we're much more candid about what's working and what isn't.
So there's actually multiple best practices in this room that people with their strategic plan put an icon on it if it's one of their strategic plans, and the team may not be able to know exactly what it is, but they see that icon, this is important. And so, thank you. So for the examiners in the room, this one's a little bit for you, and for everybody in the room, if you haven't been an examiner, one of the things in the background when you're working with an examiner team is you want to give 2 pieces of feedback, and you're doing everything you can to give it. One is, what do you do that's so well that you should share it with other people, and you may not even know that it's a best practice? The second is, what are a few things that would make you better as an organization? This question is based on that, which is, how did examiner feedback help guide your journey forward? When you got that feedback, how did you use it and how did it help?
I think it was very validating in many places of the day. Those of you that have had examiners come into your organization, there are parts of the day that you're excited saying, yes, I can speak on this, we can speak strong, we're proud of the work we're doing. And then honestly, there were moments throughout the day where we all went, okay, that is an OFI for sure that we need to take back and consider. But it did create a lot of synergy. So out of that time, our team got back together and we really did do a reflection process where we started talking about what have we done? What work have we done together that has impacted schools and district? And then also from there, the reflection piece, refinement of the work we're doing, but then talking about looking forward. So looking at the OFIs, which our writing team lives in. They are part of every conversation we have about writing. Okay, we have all these OFIs. How are we going to prioritize them? And which one is going to give us the biggest leverage point? So if we work on this, is it actually going to take care of these things as well? And so that document and the conversations that we've had have been extremely helpful. Our lead examiner, Caitlin, really has gone through this process kind of with us as we went through writing training, and I'm an examiner as well. So it felt very comfortable to receive feedback from her and have those conversations about where do we need to go next. On the other side, I've had the opportunity to examine two of the groups in here today, and I will say that it's probably the best professional development I've had of my career. Having the opportunity to learn about systems and what you're looking for when you go into an organization has really opened my eyes to many things, and so I've enjoyed being in those spaces and getting to see what organizations that are leading at high levels look like, and being able to bring that back to our team. And we all have different roles on our writing team, and really my role has become having that Baldrige framework open, and we're talking about what are we doing, and we'll start talking, nope, I don't think that hits the criteria or what we're asking for. We need to think differently about this. And I think that examiner piece has really made a difference.
So you made a shift. I'm going to combine two of the questions and ask it on this. You talked about it allowed you to receive the feedback. So there is a point, and it happens right around a milestone 3, that I will typically know, should we encourage an organization to continue on this journey, or should we say, I don't think this is for you? And I do have a team lead in the room that I won't call out, that we did have a very difficult conversation with an organization, and then I did have to tell them, this is not for you. You're not going to move forward. And the change was the ability to hear the feedback in a way that you're willing to make meaningful changes versus arguing the feedback away. And I remember a moment in time that I'd like you to speak to, working with you, maybe not this, but what allowed you to see it. And we were in the room, and we were looking at a process from another organization. And I don't know if you'll remember it, but you were telling me all of the reasons that it would not work in education. And we were looking at a role model organization, and then we went to the data, and I said, where's your results compared to their results? And for me, that's a moment in time as a coach of, will I be invited in the room tomorrow, or will you remove me? And that's a very real discussion. And you as a team sat back, and you said, maybe our process isn't good as what we thought it was going to be. What brought you to the point that you could hear feedback that way from an examiner team, and now you can say, we can hear it easily and we use it?
I will say it's really modeled for us from the top down. Dr. Nick is open door. I think there is not a person in the organization that isn't comfortable talking to him. He's very outgoing and is in a lot of spaces. I think that has set the tone for our cabinet leadership as well, to take feedback and to listen to concerns or ideas. And then I think our group at our level are very open, and we meet in different ways that allows us to look at the problems that I'm having in my department that may be totally different than in another department, but to seek that feedback and work in tandem next to each other. And so I think it really has been modeled for us as the expectation, and it's something that we just have continued to keep up and receive well.
Can I piggyback on that? And I'll also add to that, I think that the Baldrige, like, I understood your question a little bit differently. So I remember the meeting you're talking about, because it did feel like a whole lot of like, no, that's not going to work, when it was really you just explaining how to really look at continuous improvement across a system. And I think that some of the respective voices at the table, because that was very early on, before they really understood the Baldrige process, were defensive, because we're talking about their tenet of the strategic plan. And so they're defensive of their baby, like they own it. And so like, oh, well, that wouldn't work, or we couldn't do that. Oh, but we do this instead. And it seemed very defensive. And I think it was because we, as a full Baldrige team, didn't have a comprehensive understanding at that time of what Baldrige actually was. And it's about moving the needle and everyone rowing in the same direction and continuous improvement. And as that felt safety continued to develop and people in the room realized, oh, this whole process and being open to that feedback is actually going to move my KPIs within my tenet of the strategic plan, it became very much more open, and then we started chugging along way faster.
Can
go ahead.
I add to that
Please.
just a bit? I think at the heart, we have a lot of people in our organization that care about kids, and we try to hire people that care about kids and support our mission to help and inspire all students reach their full potential. And so for us, I think we have a lot of people that are able to sit back and realize that feedback is not about my pride and ego. It's about our mission. And once you can put yourself in that place and that is seen throughout the organization, it just inspires that more.
Christy, that's a celebration.
What advice, sorry, I'm going to go to the last question on here for a minute, because I think this is a really good time, and then we'll go back. What advice would you give others in the room that may not be there yet, of really comfortable going, wait a minute, I'm ready to hear something that I could do better and make a change and be able to put my ego aside? What advice would you give them to help them do that?
It's not about you.
Oh.
I think that's the advice, is it really isn't about you. Why did you get into that business? And once you free yourself up for it to not be about you, that is a very, a much more content and happy place to be, because you can realize that I tried my best, it didn't work, what did I learn? Let me own my mistakes and then move forward and do better the next time.
For kids.
For kids, or for saving lives as donors, whatever that may be for your organization and whatever your passion is.
So there are some people in this room that have heard me say this, but I'm going to say it again. After being in the room with you, I have a different view of public education, because I walked out of a room of people that do exactly what you did, not by saying it, but in actions that demonstrate that you love the kids, you love the community you're in, and you are facing significant challenges that I did not understand. And I will say, I will just testify as somebody that's been with this group, this is a group that I would say truly loves our kids if we're in their area, and their actions demonstrated that. And I think that it's not about you demonstrates that incredibly well. So how are you continuing the journey towards excellence moving forward?
So I think we can sum it up kind of in 3 words: refine, create, and celebrate. So reflecting on what we've done and continually improving the processes and systems that we're putting in place. An example of that is the scorecards and goal cards for school sites. We've come back together this year and are talking about what worked from last year, what needs to be different, and bringing that back to the team to look at and have multiple sets of eyes so that we can make it better and better, and then talking about how you scale it from there. When we talked about one mission and getting to that place, we're moving forward with the mantra of one team, one mission, and really leaning into we are one unified group, whether we're in 27 buildings or not. We're all here for the same purpose. And if you know education nowadays, there's mobility. Our kids are moving between those 27 buildings frequently. And so to have that sense of stable environment from site to site is really important for us. I think creating systems and processes are extremely important. And so we've got our mantra for next year, one team, one mission. We're working with a Standards of Excellence Committee. Courtney and I have had the opportunity to work with our secretarial staff as well as principals to talk about our core values and what does that look like to live in your role, those core values. So there are lots of opportunities. I think going back to the examiner process, it helped us prioritize what's most important right now and what can we really tackle and do really well, knowing that we want to do all the things. And we are all type A and want to do it all tomorrow, and so that's been really hard. And then leaning into celebrations. As we talk about moving into one team, one mission next year, we all know if you've been on successful teams, you have to celebrate. And because we're all about the work and doing what we need to do for kids every day, we forget to pause and celebrate the little things. We're much better about the big things. And so we have started putting in and inserting some intentional places where those small things that really matter to individuals or individual buildings are going to take place really from the future on. And so we're excited about the things that we're doing. As I've been listening to all of you today, we've been taking notes of we need to do that, and we need to do that. So we're going to have to go back and reprioritize, I think, because we've gotten some great ideas.
I still think you could have chased a 4, but I think you made the decision for a 3 for all the right reasons. So what does achieving that mean for you, your team, and your students?
So I think, and I'm speaking from a communications, public relations lens on this one, but I think it's a way for us to sort of validate the work that we're doing in a public way and share that with our community. We talk about the things happening in our district, but this is a way to sort of, put the stamp on it that yes, we're doing this thing, we're being recognized by another organization. And then I think internally too, it's affirmation for our building leaders because they know they're doing the work, but I think kind of back to the point we've said, it's an opportunity to celebrate that work and recognize that this isn't the end, this isn't the destination. I've heard that several times, that it's about the journey. This is just one point in that for us, but I do think it's a way for us to really just celebrate the work that was already happening, elevating that, and then continuing to celebrate those things.
I'm the perpetual piggybacker today. But I'll add to what Courtney said. I think, too, one of the things Heath said when we first started our journey was that Baldrige isn't about keeping the excellence work to yourself. It's about sharing what works really well. And that spoke to me because in the field of education, especially having been at the state level, a lot of times when we know something works really, really well, we want to keep it close to us because it works well and we don't want to share it and it makes us look good. But the Baldrige way is sharing what can work for all kids. And so I think moving forward, as well as we're having these consistent results in our programs that do help our students achieve their full potential, that we continue to share that with other districts who are reaching out to us to know about our programs. How did you reduce suspensions by this much? How are you getting achievement here? How are you doing all of these things? And the Baldrige way has helped us in looking forward of being like, no, now it is important to meet with Shawnee. That's not just an ask to go, hey, share the love. That's important, and that's Baldrige work to help the kids in Shawnee to learn from our processes. And I just use Shawnee as an example, but that's been happening a lot since Baldrige, a lot of highlights from other districts wanting to know what we're doing. So I think that's another way forward, is sharing the love.
I'll give you a heart emoji. I know where to make up some time. Thank you. Final question for people in the room that are just taking the journey. Any general advice you'd give them?
And then I'll hand it to my colleagues to see if they want to piggyback on what I was going to say. But don't wait till you feel as though you could win an award to start. Just start going. Systems do not have to be perfect because you're going to learn along the way. And when you start where you're at, be honest about where you are and be vulnerable about where you are, what's working, and where there are gaps. Because it's about building a process for asking better questions and using what you learn on how to improve. I will also say, like, the quantitativeness of the results section freaks this connector out because I'm not wired like that. And so leaning into the qualitative stories of how your excellence journey impacts your people is huge. Because I think about some of our programs where we see a lot of qualitative success. I'll give you just two quick examples on how important those stories are. Being over the therapy program in Norman Public Schools, we work with students who can't access services outside of the school day. So success for our student clients might not look like success quantitatively in Section 7. That's where those stories are really important, because the fact that I have a student who's chronically absent, but he comes to school on the days he knows he has a session, that he's still chronically absent, it still shows in our chronic absenteeism data, but I know that Johnny is showing up on the day he gets to meet with his therapist, and that doesn't show quantitatively, but those qualitative stories are powerful. And the same thing goes for academic achievement. I might not be able to see a 3% growth in a student academically, but the fact that my nonverbal student tried out for Matilda and got a part, that's success, right? And so leaning into those stories and those qualitative stories is super important in your application. And just from my perspective, it's not all about Section 7 results. The more you can weave in those qualitative success stories, like our friends at LifeShare did so beautifully before us, that's where magic happens. Anybody else?
Well, I just think it's interesting that as we were planning for this, and they were worried about whether they could fill the 30 minutes, and you hear that we're getting the hook here in a minute to be pulled off. But that, I think, shows how passionate they are about what we've gone through to this point. And I think, we've learned a lot. I think the piece about letting them knew what we were doing, but didn't probably understand the impact of letting them lead up that would have in that meeting. And so that was really, I think, a critical piece. And then, I'm going to steal your advice, and that is, enjoy the journey. And so we have. It's had its ebbs and flows, but we've enjoyed it, as you've heard in their passion.
Thank you. This group has been good friends with us, and so very much appreciate it. Thank you. All right.